We really appreciate you taking some time to attend our event here today, and we want to really welcome you. As you can see there on the screen, kind of the motto of our company is "Your secure retirement is our business." And I think as you see, or at least it's my hope, that as you see us go through the presentation and really explain some of the dynamic of people's retirement and trying to help make it as secure as we have the ability to do so, hopefully you'll take away some important tips that will benefit you as soon as you go home today. So we really hope that you benefit from this. So first, let me kind of explain a little bit about my company itself. So again, as I said, my name is Judah Day. I am the founder and president of Day Financial Group. I've actually, believe it or not, been in the business. It doesn't even seem like it's been that long, but this year is 20 years that I've been in the business. And that's just from the time that I've been licensed and helping my clients and some of the clients of my father's firm. Now, I learned from a really experienced person, and it was my father, Braid Day. As you can see, he's still a member of the company. In fact, Braid is the registered investment advisor of Day Financial Group. And he's been training me for a long time. I've worked with him over the years. I've learned a lot from him. And you may have even heard from him or had friends and family that have done business with him over the years. He's got a very good reputation around here, and my goal is to follow in those footsteps. Now you see also Julie Day. Now Julie Day, that's my better half for a certainty. Me and Julie have been married as of now for this year will be 18 years. So we're looking forward to celebrating our 18th wedding anniversary. And we've got 3 beautiful children. 2 oldest are girls, and the youngest, energy, ball of energy, is my son. So we have a big family, and we live right here in the local area. You'll see also that Julie is the events coordinator. So another way of saying that is she's kind of the party planner, really, and she loves her job. She works with me on occasion. She doesn't work all the time in the office. But a lot of our client appreciation events that we do, she kind of comes up with the ideas. We have all kinds of really cool client appreciation events, golf outings, dances, other events that hopefully you guys will get to enjoy at some point as well. Also, she helped kind of organize some of the stuff here today. So make sure and thank her on the way out for this event here today. Now we have also Krista Walker. Krista Walker is the director of administration, and basically, she kind of helps run the day-to-day within our office. She helps take care of a lot of the activities that our clients have and requests, getting paperwork, getting copies of documents. She's also the one that uploads all of the documents for our clients into the generational vault, and she sent you the email that gave you the invitation to join the generational vault, do the COMRA, and create that complimentary account. She's the one who registered you, as you can see her there in the back. So we're really happy that you're here. That's kind of an introduction of our company and kind of the basic roles of who we are. Now we have some strategic partners as well. So I'd like to mention those because even though they're not part of our company, they're really important and valuable members of people that we recommend them to and that we try to use to support our clients or even those that aren't our clients. So the first one mentioned on there is David Davies. David is an estate planning attorney, and he has helped a lot of families in this area, a lot of our clients as well. He does a lot of help for people with powers of attorney, wills, trusts. He does forms of Medicaid planning and things like that as well. Spin down and making sure people get care in those long-term care facilities wherever reasonably possible. So we do a lot with him, and we have used him a lot to help our clients over the years. Now we also have Nick Stovall. You're going to see as you go through the event here today that taxes is a huge part of this new generation retirement planning system that we use. It's weaved in almost everything that we do and in all decisions almost that people make. So we really wanted to have a really good tax strategist, and we believe that Stovall and his company really accomplishes that. I believe in his ability so much that he actually does mine and my family's as well. Now, David Johnson, basically his primary role is he's a plan design specialist. Now, what that means is when I help a family to create a plan, and you're going to see as we go through the event today that we're big believers in creating a strategy. So not just, offering products or individual things, but creating an overall strategy. And I wouldn't pretend to know everything about everything. I think that's, in fact, not a good thing to try to do. So I use people like David Johnson and his team to help create a lot of the reports and look through a lot of the systems and plans that we put in place, the strategies we put in place for our clients, so they get a good understanding and know that a lot of smart people have looked at their plan. You also see on there Brady Day. Now, Brady's my brother, and he's our licensed health and Medicare planner. So his primary role is a lot of the families that come work with us as they get closer to retirement, or maybe they are in retirement, they need help with their Medicare plan. So, choosing, do you keep the plan from work? If you can't keep the plan from work, what do you do in the transition period? Should you get a Medicare Advantage, a Medicare supplement? Should you get a drug plan? Are there other options? Medicare can be kind of complicated. You might have even heard of it kind of as ABC soup. So Brady is the one, my brother, that we send that to, and that he takes care of the Medicare side. So this is kind of an overview of my company, and then now the strategic partners, some of the people that we use that are not part of our company, that are outside entities that we refer a lot of family and friends to, as well as clients. So now the question is, what are the things that we primarily focus on and offer within our company? Now, some of the services that our firm offers is listed on the screen here today. Now, it's not all inclusive, but it lists out some of the primary objectives that our firm does for people. We have IRA and 401k rollovers as an example. We focus on asset protection and income planning. We have long-term care solutions, both the traditional methods and some new methodologies that are beneficial for many. We work on wealth management and transfer strategies, reviewing your portfolios and analyzing the types of investments and products that are there and their efficiencies, as well as have active management solutions for our clients. And as a company, those are some of the services that we offer. We really kind of view ourselves as problem solvers. So if you're a problem solver, wherever problems arise, certainly you're going to try to fix those problems and help people accomplish that. So we offer a lot of different services. But one of the things that we feel like is really important for our company is really understanding what we want and how we want to introduce what we believe is the new generation retirement system, and how this presentation is kind of going to be structured for you today. So each of you made the decision to come to this event, obviously. Perhaps you're nearing retirement, you're in need of a financial professional, you're just kicking the tires, you're saying, hey, I just want a second opinion, or maybe you have many reasons for being here and listening to this presentation today. But let me share with you what it really looks like to work with me and follow our new generation retirement system. Now, to begin with, I am guided by three principles, and principles are really all encompassing in every aspect of our business. So the three principles that we're guided by is fiduciary, transparency, and technology. Now, it's my opinion that whoever you work with, even if it's not me, should also have these primary principles as really a foundation or as pillars to running their practice, especially when it comes to a retirement planning system. And that's why we do that. Now, next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lead you through the 5 new generation retirement systems. And really, these are the things that we believe are important if you're looking, kicking the tires, or looking at us or another financial planning company, investment advisor or firm, what you want to look at. So first, you're looking at finding that financial service professional. So you found me. You found one at least anyway. And once you find some, then there needs to be some planning process. There needs to be some steps involved. So there's fact and feeling finding, collecting knowledge about you, making sure they understand you before making recommendations. Then next, there's the strategy. When somebody understands the person that they're trying to make the plan for, there needs to be a strategy to build that plan based on their feelings, based on your feelings, based on the facts about your situation. Then there comes recommendations and implementations. This would be specific a product information or specific plans and instruments that you would implement in your strategy. And then there's the ongoing relationship. It shouldn't end just when somebody becomes a client of our firm or when you become a client of anyone's firm. So those are the 5 basic strategies or the 5 basic steps, as it were, to choosing this type of person. So let me tell you the possible benefits of the system once you kind of put this into play. And to do that, we're going to use a very well-known family in America. Now, can any of you guess the name here? The last name here, it's the Cleavers, right? A very famous family, well-known. We have here Ward, June, Wally, and Theodore. Wally was the all-American teenage son. Theodore was known as the Beaver, right? He was the adventurous younger son, always getting into trouble and causing challenges. But you know, this is an example of a typical family. And even though your situation might be different, it does help illustrate how things might work for many people, many families. And yours is certainly different, likely, but it will create a form of a reference point for you kind of as we go through today, give you some ideas to kind of think about for your particular situation. And here's a quick note to all of you that I want you to kind of consider. This is for the do-it-yourselfers. And that's great. I'm a do-it-myselfer as well for a lot of different things. But for many couples that I've experienced, we found that typically, usually there's kind of the primary financial person. They're the ones that are, intimately involved with the finances. They have a very close relationship with the financial person. And usually they're the one that handles, a lot of those finances. And then you have the other person that usually isn't as involved. Maybe they don't know as much about finances. But what I'd like you to do is stop and ask yourself, what will happen financially if something happens to the primary financial person in that relationship? Will the surviving spouse be able to, step into the shoes of the primary financial person of the relationship? Or will the surviving spouse more than likely kind of seek help and get the help of a professional like myself? Many times that may be the case. So if you're that do-it-yourselfer person, it's okay. We understand that. And if this is the case, what I'd like you to really consider and let your mind move towards as we go through this event is to consider this event as an opportunity to select the financial service professional for that surviving spouse, or for the one that if the primary became incapacitated in some way, they could be working with them in the future to help them make those decisions and guide them along in that path. So this will really benefit those that are looking for help and those that are kind of the do-it-yourselfers and going through all of this. So really, in finding a financial service professional, that's, remember, the first step in that process. So how do you begin going about that process? Well, the first thing to do is really understand the different types. You've probably met with or worked or heard of various types of financial professionals throughout your life, but you may not have a true clear understanding of the difference, for example, between an insurance agent, a registered representative broker, or an investment advisor representative. So you may not know exactly how they get paid or who they're working for. All of those things can be important when you're choosing what type of planner might be right in your particular case. And it can all get really confusing because a lot of these people will come up with various names for themselves. might calling themselves, retirement specialists, income planners, or whatever it is. So we want to kind of break down the individual licensure that might even go along with them to make it a little bit more clear. So if you're looking for, as you can see here, if you're looking for one of these, you have an insurance agent. So the insurance agent is driven by commission product transactions. So when they make, when you purchase a product from them, they will make a commission. They will make money on that transaction. Now they work as representatives, or they work in behalf of their affiliated insurance carriers that they're appointed with. So that's an insurance agent. And you can probably think of some examples of those and the products that they recommend. Then you have a registered representative or a broker. Now, a broker is also paid commission on product transactions. The easiest term that I've used with this, just to kind of put my mind and grasp it, is a real estate broker, right? When they sell a home, there's a transaction, it generates a commission. That's the way registered representatives and brokers are compensated. Now, they work in behalf of the affiliated firm. For example, a real estate agent will work oftentimes for a brokerage firm. So when they make a sale or when they do a listing, they do it under the umbrella of that affiliated firm. And a registered broker works the same way. They give them the guidelines as to what they can and cannot do. Then finally, you have an investment advisor representative. So typically, investment advisor representatives typically get paid based on the amount of money that is under management. They get a fee, charge a fee based on how much is under management. Work solely on behalf of their clients, and they're an actual fiduciary, and they work in a fiduciary capacity. That means that they are expected to work in the best interest of their clients and the individuals that they work with. So as you begin looking for someone to assist you, these are three categories that you should consider. So if you're looking for a more trusted advisor, you may want to really consider looking at an investment advisor representative that can offer a true comprehensive financial service plan, and they'll be expected to act as a fiduciary in your benefit. So that's the beginning of it. Now, when it comes to our firm and really looking at that new generation of retirement, technology is certainly changing the landscape of the financial services industry, much like it's revolutionized other industries. It can really allow for better financial outcomes through increased knowledge, through more focused management, dedicated design, increased tax efficiency. And those are just examples of what technology can really help accomplish. But ultimately, what this technology does is it allows for more of my time to be spent focusing on your needs and our relationship. As I get a better understanding of your needs, we develop our relationship, that technology will just make it easier to accomplish the goals and desires that you have, and then we can work better together. What's I thought was kind of interesting, and there was a study that was done by Javelin Strategy and Research, and what it said is about 2 out of every 3 boomers, their primary way of managing their checking accounts is digital, through some digital channel. Now, why is that important to you? How does that affect you? Well, as you are a consumer, you have come over the years to expect efficiency. And that's why people are using these online banking tools, for example, for checking. You rely on the benefits of these tools, and your retirement shouldn't be any different. So think about the ability that you have now in your current setup. Do you have everything working with technology, really being efficient as you need? Retirements are forcing that new generation of retirement in this industry, and they're guided by efficiency, but rooted in relationships built on trust. So you can see how technology really moves, that has moved this industry. Now, I believe that I am able to help you navigate the new generation retirement and offer you really a high level of service and support because of those 3 principles that guide me. And I rely heavily on technology to accomplish that and accommodate you in whatever ways that there are. Because I act as a fiduciary, because I rely on technology, that allows me to have full transparency with you. And I think that the times that we live in, that's really important for the clients that I work with. So let me explain that transparency in a little more detail. As part of this presentation, you're going to hear me talk about technology. Specifically, when I talk about technology, pay attention when I mention generational vault, or when you see the generational vault icon on the screen. This is a very robust complimentary portal that I offer to all of my clients. And actually all of you have access, at least for a while right now, through that complimentary service. It's a complimentary benefit because it gives you transparency at every step of the process. I use generational vault to collect and store data. It could be your data, it could be reports and information I give you. I and you can easily access data very safely and securely 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I take your exact financial documents and put it in the generational vault, even if it's from outside sources. And you'll be able to easily view and organize all of your documents that are stored there, including copies of your wills, trusts, passports. We've even had clients put keepsakes, things like pictures of their family or children in there that they don't want to lose, or they want to be able to show people no matter where they go. You can access it from your devices, and you can maximize other features and benefits it offers, which I'm going to cover as we go through the presentation today. So I use technology heavily, and generational vault I have found to be very valuable. My clients really love using that system, and I think that you'll enjoy it as well. So the first thing that we already covered, the first step. Now let's look at that fact and feeling finding. How do we do that? Well, one of the first things that we do is we look at analyzing risk tolerance, and it helps you and me to understand your goals and objectives. So how did Ward and June, remember the cleavers, we're going to weave them in throughout our presentation there, how were they able to learn more about their overall risk performance? Well, what they did is they visited our website, www.risktolerance.com, and they were able to, through a very simple 11-question self-assessment questionnaire, they were able to go through what's called the color of money risk analysis, or for short, COMRA. What the COMRA does is it only takes a few minutes, usually 3 to 5 minutes. And then the output is, once you take this 3 to 5 minute questionnaire, is it gives you a score. Now that score actually indicates your risk tolerance. And that, as we're going to go through in more detail, helps us to develop a strategy. They were able to do it from their own home, just like you'll be able to do, some of which likely did it before you got here today. Now, it was a starting point. It gives them that score, and then once they have that score, it gives them the insight into their risk preferences, which is really based on questions that they answered regarding their current goals and objectives. So that's something that you can do. Now, once you have completed this COMRA, then we step into the strategy step. So let's kind of review what that is. As we move through this 5-step system together, you're going to want to know that I am designing a strategy just for you. Every one of us are different. There's many things that should be considered in making a proper retirement strategy. Every one of you have different risk tolerance, different income goals, legacy goals, tax goals. All of those things are likely different for each one of you. So what we want to do is evaluate each of those. So we will evaluate the risk, income, legacy, and taxes. And then what we'll do is we'll narrow down an approach and start looking at what each of those are for you. What might be good risk tolerance for one might be completely different for another. So we'll evaluate that and break that down. Then once we go through each of those categories, we will use the financial plan and products to actually build the strategy. That's the goal. So all of these things, your risk, your income, your legacy, your taxes, those help us to choose the plan and products that we then implement with you to build your full strategy. So using those categories, we arrive at what would be a strategy for you personally. Now, these categories, risk, income, legacy, and taxes, are actually the agenda for the presentation today, because we believe that is the foundation for the new generation retirement planning system. So again, I'll review risk, income, legacy, and financial and taxes as we go through it. So let's start with the first one, and that is asset allocation and risk assessment. That's what we're going to do as we go through all four of these categories. So as you look at this chart, this is the S&P 500 index. We're talking about risk here. So when you talk about risk tolerance, it's usually good to start with what many people kind of consider to be an index of what our economy is doing today. Now, a good measurement of business, jobs, inflation in the US is considered with this S&P index. And what the S&P index is it's an index based on 500 of the largest companies listed on the US stock exchange. So now look here at this chart as you look through this. Just look at the last, let's say, 6 years. What do you see as a reoccurring theme? Peaks and valleys, ups and downs. Now, based on where we are at this moment, obviously you see even more peaks and valleys. So as you look at where we are, you might consider that reoccurring theme. What's going to happen next? As you look just back on a short history, you've seen peaks and valleys. There's a saying that there are two primary emotions that drive the market. Can you think of what they are? Fear and greed. Those are the two primary emotions that drive the market. So if those are the two primary emotions that are driving the market, what is driving the markets today? Well, let's do a little recap. Let's think about what happened just in 2008. US homeowners lost $3.3 trillion in home equity. The stock market erased $6.9 trillion in shareholder wealth, and America had a historic loss of wealth totaling $10.2 trillion. Now, man, that's a lot of numbers. Like, how do you even put that into perspective? Well, let's try. Let's see if we can put it in perspective. Those are just the numbers that you've seen here. So the loss of wealth was almost 1/5 of the GDP of the entire world. 1/5 of the GDP. We could have paid off the entire US debt with what was lost in 2008 alone. Now stop and ask yourself, do you know what will happen to your assets if markets react like they did in 2008? Can you withstand the loss of that kind of wealth? Or would it delay or alter your retirement or the time frame in retirement? If you don't know the answer to those questions, then you may want to pay close attention to this section of the presentation to determine if you should take action and do something so that you may not be caught off guard. So what again is driving the markets today? Well, yesterday's rules may not work today, and that's always the case. And quite frankly, today's rules may not work tomorrow. The economy, interest rates, the markets, they're always changing. They're always adjusting and fluctuating. But this is important to understand when creating a strategy for you in retirement, is things are always moving. So what will really help us here when it comes to risk tolerance? The first thing that I want to do is you must understand the color of your money. And I really want to help adjust your mindset on what it is. And there's really three primary colors of money. I want to show you what these are. There is green money. Green money has less market risk. Although it's not always guaranteed, these assets are likely to maintain their value, maybe You might think about it like maintaining their principal. You may not always know what the interest rate is going to be. For example, interest rates on savings, money markets, fixed annuities, index universal life policies. Those are examples. Your principal is generally protected, but you don't always know the upside potential. You don't always know what the return will be. Now, red money is subject to market risk. Now, these are assets that have more opportunity for growth. They can go up and down, though, and they may not have a minimum guarantee. Again, you'll see examples on the screen here like stocks, bonds, mutual funds. Those are just examples of a few. Now, there's one other category that rounds off our three, and that's yellow money. Now, that may be the same financial instruments as red money, but they're professionally managed. To better understand how I can help you design a retirement strategy, I have to kind of change your mentality about money and its color. So let's do this to help kind of explain it on the next slide. We're still on that, that theme and that basis of understanding your money and risk tolerance. So we're looking at the color of the money specifically. So based on the color of money risk analysis, remember that's what we refer to as the COMRA. Warren and June took that from the comfort of their own home. They took that risk analysis, and their goal score after they took that risk analysis was 37. So as you look there, let's say the goal score was 37. Now again, this score is derived from an interactive online questionnaire that we previously talked about. And it helped Ward and June to determine their preferences. Really, I would say this is what they want things to be. This is the way they want to be set. Doesn't necessarily mean that's how they are. That's their goal score based on their current feelings and facts. So it reflects the percentage of their assets that should be at risk based on their goals, their life stage, their current situation, investment experience, their planned income, attitudes, and values. So what does this mean for Ward and June? Well, once we receive their score, what we want to do next is really help them to organize their assets and find out their current score. We can then compare their goal score, in this case, their goal score was 57, to their current score, which in this case was 51. Now, during this step, we may realize that their current strategy doesn't actually align with what their goals are. So they want to have 37, but they're currently at 51, and many people may find themselves in the same situation. So then what would they want to do? They may want to consider realigning their assets so that it better fits their goal. Well, what's an example of that? How would they come to us? Well, let's keep going and rolling down the path with Ward and June. As I explained the color of money process. So over the years, much like many Americans, perhaps like you, June and Ward acquired a number of assets. So they have all different types of various places. They're spread out all over the place. I've had clients, that have come in and they bring me basically shoe boxes, or they bring me these big binders, and they just have these, these accounts spread out all over the place. They're not especially organized. So when working with Ward and June, what we did is we helped them to organize all of their assets. So it was all nice and neat, and they could see what they have. In addition to that, what we did is we would look at what the fees are and what the color is. So we start categorizing the color, the fees. And what's funny about it is it seems really simple. It seems so simple to just know and understand the assets you have, the color, all of the fees and things like that. But many people actually have a hard time with that step of the process. And so we try to make it easy because we do it, do it a lot. So we want to make it so that they can truly understand it. Now, once we've helped Ward and June to organize their assets, it's time to categorize those, as you can see on the screen, by their risk tolerance. Now, that is a truly necessary step in the process because it helps determine if Ward and June's goals were in line with their strategy. The only way to really figure that out is to categorize everything and see where they are. Now, we assess them. We look at their current color of money. How much is green? how much is red. So we take it after we categorize it and organize it, and we bring it down and say, okay, here's what you had, and here's how it's organized. Now, with your money that is considered red money, there's another option, and I briefly mentioned it before about that yellow money. So as we organize it, we categorize it, we get the goal score, we compare it to your current situation, but we'll also take into consider that yellow money. So yellow money is managed money. It can really give the same opportunity as red money, because remember, red money has the opportunity to both grow and decrease in value. But one of the significant differences is yellow money has the oversight of professional management. And that really makes it a little bit different category. So once we say, okay, we have all of these options, then we'll help realign your assets so that your goals are in line with your retirement strategy. So in this case, their goal was a 37. So we help them to align their assets to match what they have their goal score to be. Now, every week, I meet with individuals that are subject to too much risk based on their preferences. Again, this was revealed by their color of money report, not my recommendations, not my opinions. It's based on their risk tolerance. And recently I met with a couple who thought they were primarily in green money, which aligned with their goal score and preference, but much like the 37 score of the Cleavers, right? That was their goal. But in fact, their actual score, in other words, the way they had their accounts actually currently set up, was a 78. That's a pretty significant difference. So needless to say, they weren't very happy with the outcome, but we are happy they requested a second opinion. So it's really important that as we meet with people, as you come in, we really want to help you organize and categorize things so that your goal matches your actual setup. That will help accomplish what you have in your goals in the way that they are. So now what we're going to do is we're still on this theme of risk tolerance. And I want to talk a little bit about or illustrate the importance of understanding risk tolerance. So let's kind of take a little bit about, talk a little bit about market recovery. And here's some basic rules of rebounds. I just want to show this to you. If an investment goes down by 10%, it takes an 11% return to get back to where you started. Now, many people can't withstand a 10% loss. In fact, when you think about a return, when you think about 10%, think about it will also help you kind of quantify these interest rates. Think about it as actual dollars. So 10%, if you have $1 million, 10% is $100,000. So think about it not just as percentage, but as a dollar. Quantify it in your mind. Now imagine if you had a 30% loss, or worse yet, a 50% loss. What would that do? So let's look at that. Let's look at that 30%. If you lost 30%, you would have to make 42.8% to get back to where you started. So the question is, how long would that take? Well, notice this chart. What it has on here is if you lost, then it has the 10 through 50. Then you have an interest rate, a recovery rate that you would make, or that in this hypothetical example that someone would make. So let's look at that 30%. If somebody lost 30% and they simply were making a 5% rate of return, it would take 7.3 years to get back. It would take you 7.3 years to get back to where you were. Now, just think about that. I'm going to stop here for a minute and ask you to pull out a pen and paper. Grab your blue sheet. If you have not yet retired, I want you to write down a number. Write down on your blue sheet the number of years until you hope to retire. Write it down right now. What year do you hope to retire? How long is it before then? Now I'm going to ask each of you to kind of participate in this. If there was a market downturn, do you have enough time to make up a return just to get back to where you started? Looking at a 5 or 7% return. Is that enough time? Now, enough time might be different for everybody, until you retire. Enough time until you're forced to go back to work might be considered as well. Some people are forced to go back to work. So think about that. As you think about risk tolerance, you may need to adjust your mindset into what you're thinking about. Oftentimes you're thinking about time frames, and in retirement, what time do you have? How much time before you want to retire? So put a simple plus sign if you think that you can comfortably afford a market downturn, or a negative if you're uncertain, or if this is an area that concerns you. Now do this on the blue sheet form or in a workbook activity. Now don't look at your spouse or your friend or your neighbor or anybody else. This is based on your risk tolerance. What would make you comfortable? Can you afford, or do you have the time, enough time left to recover from a significant downturn? Now, there's a lot to take in when you're looking at, rate of return and risk tolerance. So one of the things that you've got to really review in all of this is getting the right balance. You've got to have the right balance of green, red, and yellow money. And not to mention having to understand the loads, the fees, the internal expenses, how it's associated with red and green and yellow monies. All of those things can have an impact. So when it comes to that red and yellow money, we've sought to simplify the process as much as possible, as much as we can, to help make it easier for you to understand your current situation. We use something called the Portfolio Analysis Review, or the PAR for short. Now, what does it do? Well, it helps you understand the risk associated with the investments that you have, and management starts with first understanding what you actually have. Many people we've talked to really don't understand their investments, or they don't understand their current situation. Some are surprised as to what they may even have. Review the objective and quality of the investment, and this PAR report will help accomplish that. Review your overall portfolio and how the various pieces interact and work together with each other. Then, of course, knowing how much relative risk you're exposed to. How can you categorize the amount of risk unless you know the particular products and investments and what risk is there? And then, of course, ensuring that your investments align with your goals and objectives. This report, this PAR report, actually helps to review all of those categories. So once aligned, the PAR process also allows you to assess the rewards associated with red and yellow money, and kind of identify those opportunities to maximize your assets in the market. It's all about managing risk with that reward. And the PAR report is something that we offer to each of you, as part of this process. And we're willing to offer this report for you as well. So as you're making a risk analysis, think about, are you making risks and risk mistakes that may jeopardize your retirement? Just kind of recapping this section, do you know how much risk you are taking right now? Do you know the category, the color of your money? Do you know which is red, which is green, which is yellow? Are you using the right mix of red, yellow, and green accounts? How do you minimize tax consequences on the event of a larger change? What's your risk? And is it worth the reward? Those are things that you have to consider. Would you like help making decisions about investments and evaluating that? Those are things that you need to ask yourself. So on your blue sheet, that first category, analyzing your risk tolerance. If analyzing your risk tolerance is something that concerns you, check the box on your handout. We'll also get you started with that color of money report. We're going to send that out to everybody. If you haven't already completed it, we would strongly encourage you to go in there and fix that. So at least in 5 or 10 minutes, you will know what your risk tolerance score is. I want to ask you a question. Let's see if you can get the answer. If you lost 50% in your retirement account, what percent would you have to gain to recover the losses? The answer, 100%. Remember, we reviewed this together. Now, why is it 100%? Well, you're working with half the money if you lost 50%. So you would have to make that 100% return just to get back to even. How long might that take? Do you have that kind of time? These are questions that you need to really ask yourself. Now, all of those are under that first category of risk. Now, remember, we're going to cover 4. The second one is income planning. And we're going to get into that portion now. For many Americans, Social Security serves as the foundation of their retirement income. Even though the maximum Social Security payout, for example, for the year 2020 is $3,011, the average recipient collecting Social Security is only getting $1,503. So clearly you want to do everything you can to maximize the income that you're getting from Social Security. We're also going to show you how critical of a retirement decision it is to choose when to take Social Security. It can really make a pretty substantial difference in your overall lifetime benefits. And we're going to actually give you some illustrations to show that. And then third, you should know that Social Security is potentially the best income resource you have. Every dollar you increase your Social Security income means one less dollar you have to take from your nest egg to supplement that income. So let's talk about first some of the basics of Social Security and kind of how it works. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is, basically understanding your full retirement age. So when you were born, directly affects when and how you should file for Social Security, even what options are available to you. So there's a specific age at which you will attain your full retirement age. And that again is based on your date of birth when you were born. Your full retirement age is really important because it's involved in the calculation of how and when you should file for Social Security benefits. Now, that's the first half based on your date of birth. Can't change that. That is what it is. But the other half, you can be in control of, or many people are able to be in control of. That's based on when you start taking your Social Security benefits. So when Social Security was originally set up, the full retirement age for basically everyone was 65. And it still is for people that are born before 1938. It's still age 65 for them. But the age for receiving full retirement benefits has actually increased. It's crept up. So if you were born between, for example, 1938 and 1960, your full retirement age is somewhere on a sliding scale between the age of 65 and 67. So anyone born in 1960 or later will have to wait until age 67 for their full benefits to receive, because that will be their full retirement age. So once you reach your full retirement age, what do you actually get? Okay, so the when affects Social Security. Now you need to understand what's called the primary insurance amount. The primary insurance amount, or your PIA, is the actual dollar amount. It's a figure that you get in Social Security benefits at your full retirement age. That is the age at which you take Social Security. That is your full retirement age. The age you are able to get 100% of your full retirement age benefits. So when you take Social Security is based on your primary insurance amount, and the age you take it will directly affect how much you receive from Social Security or from your primary insurance amount. Now, that might have sounded like a bunch of jargon to you, but just remember two things. Your full retirement age is based on when you were born. Your primary insurance amount is based on your full retirement age. So now when you take it, directly affects how much you get. So let's look at this chart to get a better understanding of this. If you take Social Security at your primary insurance amount, the earliest age, for most people, generally that's age 62, you're able to collect 75% of your primary insurance amount. And that means you'll be basically receiving a 25% penalty for as long as you collect your Social Security. It may be over your lifetime. But what's interesting is every month, every year that you delay collecting Social Security up until your full retirement age, that primary insurance amount, you're able to get a larger percentage of your PIA. In other words, that penalty goes down every year you delay. So let's say in this scenario, this person's primary insurance age was 66 years of age. At 66, this person is able to get 100% of their primary insurance amount. That is their full retirement age, 66. So they get 100% at their full retirement age. But what's really interesting about Social Security, and maybe underutilized for some, is every year that you delay collecting Social Security after your full retirement age, it increases by 8% simple interest. So for example, in this scenario, if this person delays collecting just 12 months, they're actually going to be receiving 108% of their primary insurance amount instead of just 100 at age 66. So as you continue to creep up, if you go all the way up to age 70, you can actually be collecting 132%. That's a 32% increase in your primary insurance amount for your lifetime. And that income can also be passed on, in many cases, to a spouse, increasing their lifetime income if somebody passes away. So you can see when you take Social Security, it can have a significant impact on how much you collect. And remember, we talked about earlier, every dollar you increase in Social Security is one less dollar you have to take from your retirement nest egg. So let's get the Cleavers involved again. With Social Security serving as the foundation for their retirement income, Ward and June have an income gap that they need to fill. An income gap is basically my income's here, my base income is this, so I need to use my retirement nest egg to fill that gap. So in this scenario that we're going to use for Ward and June, they have an income goal of $75,000 a year, pre-tax. They have $500,000 in an IRA that's available to generate income at a projected 5%. So there are three aspects of the Cleavers retirement that could be impacted by that income gap if they don't have a proper strategy in place. Number one, the IRA could be spent down more rapidly. Number two, taxes may be due on the IRA withdrawals. And number three, more of their Social Security may be taxable. We're going to walk through all of this to get you a better understanding of the impact on their retirement nest egg. So in the next slide, we're going to compare two scenarios. Scenario A. Scenario A is basically not optimizing their Social Security. Scenario B will be the optimized filing date. So they ran the report that we can offer to optimize their Social Security. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that scenario really looks like. So remember, their income goal is $75,000. So as you look at the summary of the Cleaver situation, we'll assume that the Social Security benefit is also going to grow. Now, it's important to put this in there because Social Security has something called a cost of living adjustment. It's called a COLA. It varies annually, but for our illustrative purposes, we're just going to say it's 1.5% a year. Now, as I explained the numbers on the screen, you'll want to remember the number in the blue bar. This is the income gap numbers. Because remember, their goal is to have $75,000 in income, and they have to close that gap using their nest egg. Scenario A is not optimized. So in scenario A, Ward files for his Social Security benefits at 63 in that scenario. Now he's age 70. June filed at 62. She's now 67. They're receiving a combined Social Security income of $41,193. So what's the challenge? $36,000, over $36,000 is the income gap that they have. And they need to fill that income gap by taking withdrawals from their IRA annually. And that will help make up that income gap. And you can see that illustrated on the chart. Now, if you look at scenario B, they've optimized Social Security. Ward files for his Social Security at age 70, then June files at 66. Now, afterward, Ward files, after he files, they receive a combined Social Security, as you see there, of $62,759. Pretty substantial increase in their Social Security. You say, that's in scenario B, a lesser amount of $15,000 is needed to be withdrawn annually from the IRA account. Why is that? Well, they optimized their Social Security. They got more income. Now I say, wait. You delayed in collecting Social Security. So how did you take care of your income needs in those interim years? Well, because they aren't claiming their Social Security benefits until a later age, they initially withdraw from their full income, that $75,000 from their IRA. Okay, so you might say, man, you took a big withdrawals from your IRA. How is that an optimized strategy? Well, let me show you how the numbers really break down and how they work. What happens? Let's compare those two scenarios. So one solution to solving the income gap for the Cleavers was to withdraw assets from the IRA. Now this slide looks at one consequence that can occur if Social Security benefits are really not optimized. So remember, under scenario A, we went through all of those figures. $36,000 is withdrawn from the IRA the first year of their retirement, and then they continue to withdraw that $36,000 amount each year, which is adjusted for inflation. Let's say he passes away at age 82. After that, the total Social Security amount benefit decreases. So June needs to take more money out of the IRA because they're working with less funds. So in that scenario, as you look at this, the $500,000 in the IRA is drawn down in scenario A, that's the red one, to only having $15,736 left after 20 years. Now that's pretty significant. Now you look at scenario B, that's the optimized strategy. The first year, remember, Ward and June are collecting Social Security. They only have to take out $15,286 from their IRA account. That number actually drops a little each year because their Social Security benefit gets a COLA. Remember, we talked about that. It's adjusted for inflation. Now, remember the 3 years that they delayed collecting their Social Security. They withdrew $75,000 a year for that 3 year from their IRA. So you see a pretty significant decrease in that those first 3 years. But remember that they've optimized their Social Security. That's every single month an increase in benefits in every year because they delayed. So when Ward passes away at 82, look at the significant difference here that's left. The total Social Security benefit amount decreases. So just like in scenario A, June needs to withdraw more money from the IRA. But what's the difference? Well, if you compare the difference here, the amount left after the IRA after 20 years is the difference between about $16,000 versus about $215,000. That's a pretty significant difference. Scenario B has considerably more money left over for Miss Cleaver. So you can then use that as a security blanket to help fill the income gap that she has. Now, consider the very real possibility if you're married or you have a spouse. Based on life expectancy, and think about the impact that could have on her lifestyle. If she has left over after Ward passes away, the difference between $15,000 and $200,000 might make a pretty significant impact on what she is able to accomplish. Now this side looks at another consequence. So the first one we talked about is, draining the IRA value quicker because having a lower baseline income related to Social Security. This is another consequence that can happen if Social Security benefits are not optimized, which is basically taxes. Remember, IRA distributions are fully taxable and Social Security benefits are only partially taxable. So the more income the Cleavers can get from Social Security, the less they actually need to take from their IRA account. Now that will likely reduce their taxable income. So the more taxable income they have, the greater the percentage of their Social Security income that may be taxable. So in this summary, for example, $39,000, over $39,000 is potentially lost due to taxation because Social Security benefits weren't optimized. So now let's kind of recap where we are. There's a potential for $199,000 or more in retirement assets lost by not optimizing Social Security. There's a potential for $39,000 in lost taxes. Ward and June have over a total of $239,000 in lost potential because they did not optimize their Social Security. Isn't that interesting? So kind of recapping number 1 and 2, Ward and June risk depleting their IRA sooner and paying increased taxes. IRA withdrawals are fully taxed and more of their Social Security may be taxed because they didn't optimize. So before we transition kind of from Social Security to other portions of income here, I want to talk about one other protection or danger, really. It's a third one, and it's one that's kind of difficult to talk about. According to a report of the U.S. Census Bureau in 2016, nearly 24.4% of people age 65 and older are widowed. Now, again, nobody enjoys talking about this part of it, but let's try to put it in perspective. I want you to look around and I want your help. For you as an individual, pick 3 people as part of your imaginary group. Just pick 3 people out of the audience and put them in a group with you. Now, statistically speaking, 1 in 4 of you will be widowed by the time you reach age 65. So it is something, even though it's uncomfortable to discuss and talk about, it is something that needs to be considered. So have you taken the proper steps to protect your surviving spouse? How much income will your spouse need if you pass away? Where will the money come from? Will there be enough? Does your surviving spouse know how or who to turn to if he or she loses or has any issues or has concerns about running out of money? Do they understand the finances? These are all things that need to be considered. And we're going to take it look at a situation, a hypothetical with June and Ward's situation. Ward unexpectedly passes away. And we're going to compare some charts here. So if you look at Ward's pension, he's getting $40,000. He's getting another $28,000 in Social Security. June is getting $20,000 in Social Security. So their total income is $88,000. Not bad. They're accomplishing their income goals in this scenario. Now, if you don't have a pension, obviously, mark through that line and think of the difference in income in this scenario. So now let's look at this scenario. Let's say if Ward passes away, what will happen? Well, Ward wisely chose in this scenario to take a survivor benefit on his pension. So if he passes away, his spouse may lose that $40,000, but she'll get to keep 20 of that 40. Ward's Social Security goes away. His personal Social Security does not continue being paid. That goes to $0. Now, the good thing is June is able to get survivor benefits, which means she's able to get basically no more than what her or Ward's Social Security would be. In her case, in this scenario, collecting his Social Security or survivor benefit would be equal to more than collecting her own. So what did she lose? When Ward passed away, immediately she's going to be losing $40,000 in income. So her total income has gone from $88,744 to $48,000. These changes mean she's going to experience about a 45% income loss. What does that equal in total? Over $405,000 over a 10-year period. Now think back to that scenario we considered if they didn't optimize their Social Security. She could either have $15,000 left to handle that income gap or $200,000, depending on if they optimize their Social Security. The difference could be significant in this scenario. So while it's often one person in a couple who does most of the planning, maybe they understand most of the financial decisions, this is a great reminder that both parties should be involved in decisions and have a good understanding. So as you understand and look back at income, understanding your Social Security, ask yourself these questions. Do you know the Social Security strategy that you should or already have in place to maximize your benefits? Do you have a strategy to avoid making these mistakes? Now, kind of stop the presentation for a minute here. Here's the reality. Some of you have already made these decisions. Maybe you've already made all of these Social Security decisions. What if it's too late? Because you're already on Social Security. It's too late to go back. In some cases, you can change some decisions, and we can help you with that. But what can you do? There's 2 points that I want you to take away from this. Point number 1 is it's important to review Social Security and to view Social Security as the foundation of your income plan, as all of your financial resources should work together so as to help maximize the benefits and minimize taxes. So at the end of the day, Social Security can still be viewed as the foundation that is the starting point to fill your income gap. But point number 2 is, while the concept used here related to Social Security about delaying, optimizing, getting greater income later, the dangers exposed could be applied to most any financial vehicle as part of your distribution plan. So it's really important to work with a financial professional who truly understands or is well versed in the tax advantage and disadvantage of financial vehicles. I love to use the phrase that you may be able to increase your take-home income more by saving on taxes than you do by making more money. And that's a really simple concept that can be really valuable to people in retirement and those living on that fixed income. So just because you've already filed for Social Security doesn't mean there isn't some planning that can be done in this scenario. So turn to your blue sheet, look at that, and stop and ask yourself, are you confident that you have a strategy that will help you minimize taxes, optimize your income, optimize Social Security for you? If not, we can run a report and do a nice illustration that will help you see how to do that. Now, as we continue this path down income, remember that Social Security is just one part of the retirement income phase in your life. We have this distribution phase. It's worth noting that this phase is vastly different than the accumulation phase. So you look here as in the accumulation phase as you're working and earning income, you could simply be mechanical about putting money away every month and letting it grow. You have income minus living expenses equals those savings. But then when you get into the retirement, into the income distribution phase of your life, you may no longer be able to have that steady stream of income to really count on every month for you. So you may have to make make true plans here and make what you have last as long as you will. And that is something significant that you really want to consider. You may need to pay more attention to whether your invests are gaining or losing value. When you're working, you can make money and make those contributions, but when you're no longer working, you're not making those contributions. So you have to really look at losing value, fees, loads, charges. Those things can be more important than ever because what's left after that is your income. and the skill and practice of accumulating money is vastly different than that of spending that money, of taking those distributions. And you want to be sure that your financial professional that you work with really treats your retirement income phase appropriately. So as you look at this, for example, you look at the income needs, right? Each of us will have an income need, and you have an income need. So taking a look at what retirement income might look like in this example for the Cleavers, oftentimes income is made up of different layers or various avenues of income that will generate an income gap. So in this illustration, you have income from Ward's Social Security, from June's Social Security, you have Ward's pension. And then that comes up with that income gap. So taking a look at that income, you see there is money that comes from various areas, but they still face that income gap that needs to be filled every month and every year in order to live the lifestyle that they really want to live. So one of the challenges that you can face in retirement is figuring out, okay, I have this income gap, so how can I turn my assets into a source of income in retirement? Like, how does it actually happen? What assets do I use to fill that income gap? Should I use the green money? Should I use the yellow money, the red money? What does it look like? So to help you really accomplish that, one of the goals many retirees have is they want predictable income. They want to be done with the roller coasters and up and down rides that may come with high risk. So ask yourself, how resilient would your income be to market fluctuations in its current setup? Would it be predictable? Secondly, looking at longevity. How long will your income last? What does your longevity look like? Will your income last as long as you do? Lastly, looking at efficiency. How much of your retirement assets need to be earmarked for income? If you have a specific income need, how much of your total assets need to be dedicated to predictable long-term income? All of those things can have a bearing on, the decisions that you make moving forward. Now, it's likely that you've not started taking withdrawals from your assets now or from your investments. Now, because of this, you may not have seen the effect that withdrawals can have on your assets as you make withdrawals from it. So let's take a concept. We're going to look at a concept, and it's called the sequence of returns. Now, if you look closely at these investments as you go through this, you'll notice that the returns in investment A and B are identical as you look at each of those. But what's different? Well, you can see the sequence of return is just simply reversed. It's simply upside down. So the returns are identical. And as you look down at the very bottom there, you can see over time, the value at the end of that period stays the same. So when you're accumulating money, like in this example, you have the accumulation phase of these two accounts, the sequence of the return, what the market does up and down when you start with loss or start with gains, comes up with the same ending balance. But when you start making withdrawals from money, from an investment like an income column, like you see in the income column, your results can be greatly affected by the sequence of returns. Even the average return remains the same. You notice still we're looking at the same average return due to the compounding effect on the annual accounts balance and annual withdrawals. So now, how does this all make sense? I'm going to talk through this the best I can for you since it's really small numbers. What I'd like you to do is think about averages. If I take, if I write down on 10 pieces of paper, the number on number 1, I write 1. Paper number 2, I write 2. Paper number 3, I write 3. So forth, all the way to 10. And then I put it in a box and I shake it up and pour it out. What are those numbers all going to average? The average is going to stay the same. However, on scenario number 2, if I start taking withdrawals, in other words, I take out the sheet of paper that has the number 3, I take out the sheet of paper that has the number 8, will those numbers come up with a different average? Yes, they will come up with a different average. So as you take a look at this chart, it's the same return. You'll notice that the returns are exactly the same, but it's assuming a hypothetical investment, which is $1 million. However, this time we're going to assume an annual withdrawal of $50,000 taken mid-year and adjusted annually by 3% for inflation. So you can see in these examples, if you adjust the return, same as scenario 1, again, the returns are the same, but now that they're taking money out, scenario 1, the person runs out of money after 16 years because they're taking those withdrawals. But if you look at scenario 2, they have $1.5 million left in 20 years. So you can see the sequence of return matters. So the question is, when you retire, the year you retire and you start taking income, if that is a down year, will you run out of money? Will you fit into scenario number 1 where they run out, or will the year that you retire have that huge gains and return in the market in scenario number 2? Will you risk? Are you willing to risk your retirement? So it's important to understand the sequence of returns and how it can actually affect your income over your life expectancy. And we're going to go back to the Cleavers. We're going to go back to them and discuss the role of longevity when creating retirement income. In this scenario, they're retired at age 65. They're now age 75. Now the chart on the left, if you look at that, remember they retired at 65. Now they're age 75. So they created an income plan. Now, if they were to look at this at age 65 and say, okay, based on longevity, we should expect to spend about 20 years in retirement based on average longevity. So at 65, when they're retiring, it's expected to be age 84 and 85 for longevity, for life expectancy. So they say, hey, we're going to make a plan that's 20 years long. That should get us about through, our retirement years through that point. But look at what happens as they age. Okay, as they age, if you look at that age 75, now they're age 75. Well, what happens to longevity? As you age, your life expectancy actually goes up. And there's several reasons for that. But if they stuck with that 20-year plan, but they outlive that plan, they actually are in a scenario where they may have run out of money. Fast forward to those ages and they might actually be out. So think again of that scenario when you look at that 20-year retirement. Would you rather have $15,000 left or $200,000 left after that 20-year scenario? So what is longevity? How will it affect the assets and the income that you're going to need? That all can have an effect on you. Now that really stands to the point or makes the point of efficiency. Because if you're trying to make your funds last as long as you do, efficiency can be really helpful in that. If you have a specific income goal in mind, then the question is, how many of your assets need to be earmarked for income? Now, there was a study done in 1994. It was in the Journal of Financial Planning. It identified that a withdrawal rate of 4% as being optimal to last 30 years in retirement. That was optimal. Now, that was optimal because it helps you not run out of money. But that was adjusted. In 2013, as you can see, Morningstar revised the estimate to 2.8%. Now, why the decrease there? Well, it's due to volatile markets, low interest rate environment, advisory fees, more conservative mix of stocks and bonds because of the volatile markets. So how much money then do you have to have using that same percent rule? If you needed just $30,000 of additional income, so you have, your baseline income with Social Security as an example, but you need a little more income to help you reach and fill that income gap. If you use the old 4% rule to equal that $30,000 a year in income, you'd need $750,000 in assets using that 4% rule. But now remember, they based on the market volatility and those several other things, they revised that. Now to equal that same $30,000, you would need about $1 million set aside to generate that same income. So as you can see, a more efficient strategy might be helpful. So are there other options that are more efficient? Well, if you look at this example, if you look at this green line, there are certain products that are more efficient when it comes to generating the income that you need. So for example, in this green line, you would only need $550,000 to generate the same $30,000 guaranteed over that 30-year period of time to make sure you don't outlive your money. So efficiency matters. And the products that you choose to meet that efficiency also have a pretty significant impact. So now let's talk a little bit about efficiency when it comes to taxes. Take a look at what can just wreak havoc on your taxes and on your income stream. If you turn to age 70 and a half on or after January 1st, 2020, you can wait until age 72 before the IRS requires you to begin taking distributions from your qualified retirement accounts. This is called a required minimum distribution, or RMDs. Now, prior to January 1st, 2020, RMDs needed to begin by age 70 and a half. So you got to kind of adjust that mentality a little bit. Now, if you fail to take required minimum distributions, this can actually be really costly. Any owner who fails to take required minimum distributions in full may be subject to a 50% excise tax on the distributed portion, as published in IRS publication 590, which we're going to go over an example here. So let's take a look at how costly that would be. Let's just say you miss taking an RMD of $15,000. If you miss taking that distribution, once you do take that RMD, you may have a 50% excise tax on that distribution. That means $7,500 and excise penalty is going straight to the IRS. Now, you took a distribution of $15,000. You're going to pay tax on the whole distribution amount, not just the amount that you get to keep. If you had a 30% rate, that's another $4,500 that the IRS gets. Well, what does that leave for you? Your net distribution is only $3,000 from the initial $15,000. That means 80% belongs to the IRS. Now, part of it was because you did not have an efficient distribution plan. So again, ask yourself, do you have the knowledge needed to make an efficient distribution plan? Remember, you don't have to earn more money to increase your take-home income. You just need to focus on potentially saving on taxes to create a more efficient plan. So kind of recapping this section, how predictable is your retirement income going to be based on the plan you currently have, or if you have one? Will your money last as long as you do? Are your assets being used efficiently? Are you able to minimize taxes on your investments and income? If you go back and you think about all these takeaways and look at that last slide, you may be able to increase your take-home income by saving on taxes, and you may be able to make more on your take-home by saving on taxes than you do on making more money or focusing on market returns. So efficiency is really important. So now look back on that blue paper, on your blue sheet, and ask yourself, is this an area that concerns you? If you're creating your retirement income, if that is something that really concerns you, making sure your assets are efficient, they're going to last as long as you do, then check that box on the handout and we'll get started on your retirement compass report, complimentary report that we're offering. Now I have a question for you. Let's see if you know the answer. In 2017, what percentage of Americans reported that they had fully recovered financially from the 2008 recession? What percentage reported that they had fully recovered? The answer? Only 44%. Only 44%. That means that 56% of people reported that they had not fully financially reported. 37% said that they had somewhat recovered. 12% said they hadn't begun to recover, and 7% said they may never recover. So think about your current situation. So now we're looking at making a strategy for you. There's numerous factors. We've talked about risk. We've talked about income. Now let's talk a little bit about choosing your legacy before we finally talk about taxes. Baby boomers are going to pass down an estimated $30 trillion in assets to their children and grandchildren. Now the result is a significant percentage of children and grandchildren are fighting for what they believe is their fair share of their inheritance. So legacy planning is not just for the rich and famous. It's about the money that is left on when you pass, whatever the amount is. So stop and think about your family. Will a child feel shorted or confused? Will they understand your intent of what you're trying to accomplish? What legacy are you choosing for your family? How do you want them to remember you? So active legacy planning offers control. And really that's something that you really may want to happen, because if you make all of those things very clear, then it minimizes disputes or difficulties or fighting or separations in family due to really trying to figure out what did mom and dad want. So opportunities to help maximize taxes are also there in place and can pass financial legacy and the legacy of the heart onto your children, which is ultimately what many want to accomplish. Now, here's the thing. You have choices. The question is, do you have the knowledge to make them? Well, let's talk a little bit about, some of those choices and things that you may have set. One area where I've seen many mistakes and that happen often, and by far one area that we believe people should care about the most is their grandkids, or they do care about the most. So let's talk about per stirpes and per capita. Ward had never intended to disinherit any of his loved ones. He wanted the fair share to go to his children and grandchildren. So let's look at this plan. You've got per stirpes and per capita in distribution. And based on how somebody sets things up, somebody could actually unintentionally disinherit their grandchildren. So let's look at the per stirpes. Per stirpes follows the family tree line as the predecessor beneficiary passes away. So on the other hand, if you had somebody set up as per capita, it wouldn't do that. It follows a little bit different here, a little bit different. The per capita generally ends the branch on a family tree upon the death of a designated beneficiary. So let's follow down the line. In per stirpe, Mr. Cleaver has his IRA. He passes away. He passes it on to Miss Cleaver. If Wally passes away, in this scenario, each grandchildren also still gets their portion. It's passed on and continued. But with per capita, let's use that same scenario. Mr. Cleaver passes away, passes it on to Miss Cleaver. If Wally dies before the distribution, both of his grandchildren may be completely disinherited from that. Well, where does the money go? 100% goes to the beef, right? Goes to Beaver, goes to him, and then the grandchildren of Beaver and his grandchildren receive what's left. So do you know how your accounts are set up now? Are you confident that you have it set up as per stirpes versus per capita? How do you want it set up? These are simple things that can be accomplished. We can help you review those. We've been successful in helping many families to review those and get those set up. Now we're going to talk next about our legacy when it comes to IRA distribution. Now that you've established the structure of your IRA legacy by learning at the per stirpes and per capita concept, let's review the ways to pass your IRA on to your heirs. Legislation was passed in December 2019, and it mostly eliminated what was known as the stretch IRA. They replaced it with a 10-year rule. Now, the 10-year rule requires that beneficiaries of an IRA take the full amount within 10 years of the death of the IRA owner. Now, there are some exceptions, which we'll cover a few of those. So the main options are either an immediate distribution or distribution over the course of a 10-year period. Now you can also have a lump sum distribution at the end of a 10-year period. All of those are, kind of different examples. So let's kind of read through this. So you have the immediate distribution. The IRA can choose a lump sum distribution, and then the money goes directly to the beneficiaries. Now, what's the benefit? Well, the beneficiaries have immediate access to a lump sum. Now let's look at that 10-year rule. Most beneficiaries must withdraw all of those funds within 10 years. However, the beneficiaries have to meet certain exceptions, and they could even still stretch their IRA over the life expectancy. So what are some of those exceptions? You've got surviving spouse, minor beneficiary, so their own children until age 18, disabled or chronically ill, or beneficiaries not more than 10 years or younger. So there's some examples. Well, what are the benefits of doing that? Well, you have tax deferred growth because, it's not just a lump sum distribution. It still has that opportunity to grow tax deferred, and it provides tax planning flexibility. So instead of just getting a lump sum of money where you may then have to pay taxes on all that lump sum, it will be spread out over a period of time or perhaps even life expectancy, depending on the scenario. So now what does that actually look like? Well, as you can see, looking at this chart, even though the new 10-year rule can have a significant impact on the total income provided by an inherited IRA, look at the total income difference between taking a lump sum, taking withdrawals over a 10-year period, and taking a lump sum after 10 years. You can see the lump sum, they get $250,000. If they do the withdrawal over 10 years, it's $308,000, and a lump sum after 10 years is $407,000. Because it allows those years, it goes up in those scenarios, allows that time frame for tax deferred growth. And then, of course, stretch IRA, it's no longer available in most of these scenarios, but you can kind of compare the difference whether you have a child age 52 or a grandchild age 22 and the significant difference that makes. So there are some exceptions which still allow for the stretch IRA concept, like as I mentioned before, a critically ill child. But that's an area where it'd be helpful to work with a financial professional that really understands those rules. So this is an option for you that you need to consider if you have an IRA. Now, in addition to that, when it comes to kind of the legacy and the story, there's a famous father that made his wife the executor of estate, gave her control of the business, and it was his third wife. Now, the equally famous son was the principal player in his father's business. In other words, he was integral in his father's business. Well, what was the problem? The son didn't understand the implications of his father's estate plan. As a result, he didn't own the rights to his own name or signature. Now, when his father passed away, it sparked a long feud between the son and the wife, wife number 3. What happened? Why was it such a problem? The wife was the executor and had control. So that means she had some control over the father's actual biological son. So what's the lesson? Don't underestimate the possibility that family rifts will develop or widen if something should happen to you. Who was this family? This was the story of Dale Earnhardt Jr. Keep in mind that without a proper legacy, your family could miss out on significant dollars. What you don't know could hurt you, and it could hurt more than just you. It could hurt your family. It could hurt your heirs. How confident are you that your assets will go to those that you intended? Are you helping to minimize taxes for your heirs? Are all of your beneficiary forms up to date and properly accounted for? Will your current legacy or lack thereof create a family feud? Look back on that blue paper. Having a good legacy plan is not just for the wealthy. It's not just for those that have millions and millions of dollars to pass on. It is your legacy. So if choosing your legacy is something that concerns you, check the box on the sheet. We can also get started on a second opinion for that for you. So here's a question. As of 2019, how many Americans have unclaimed cash or property, mostly being held by the government? The answer, 1 out of 10. 1 out of 10. This is money that is owed to beneficiaries, include homes, bank accounts, and other holdings. How much of that $58 billion remains unclaimed because beneficiaries either know nothing about it or can't find the documentation necessary to prove that they should receive it? That won't happen with a generational vault. They'll have access to that. They'll see all of those things. So make sure that is something that's important. If that's something important for you, that you check those boxes and follow through it. So now we've discussed risk, income planning, legacy planning. What about helping with taxes? Well, we're not going to go into all the ins and outs in taxes, and you might not even enjoy doing so. Your brain might be half spent by where we are now. But part of determining a proper distribution involves understanding the implications that taxes can have on your income. And as you look at this chart, what I'd like you to do is just look at what happens when the government gets in a situation where they need money. What happened around 1916 that required tax rates to go to a top tax rate of 67%? World War I. What happened around 1944? Now they dropped down. They did drop down for all. What happened around 1944 that required such a tax increase? World War II. Why did the tax rate stay high between 1950 and 1970s? The Korea and Vietnam Wars. What about 1990s that required the income tax increase? The Gulf War. Currently, the top tax rate sits at 40.8%. So now as you think about what's happening in the world around us, you think about the debt that's being created. What do you think is likely to happen in the future? Now, to help you think through that even a little bit more, let's talk about the needs of the government for just a moment. The national debt is climbing. We're looking at over $28 trillion in debt. I mean, how do you even quantify or understand $28 trillion? Someone has to pay that debt down. Now, how is that going to be accomplished? Well, there's generally two ways the country can do that: spend less or raise taxes. Which one do you think is more likely? So, if you think one or the other is more likely, the future U.S. taxation may be uncertain. And the truth of the matter remains the same. Our current tax revenue cannot cover our obligations. That is simple math. So what is likely going to happen in the future? Think about that for a minute. So now as you think about that, you think about those two options: spend less or raise taxes. Let's look a little bit more at kind of how money and taxation works. Why do I want to spend time reassuring you that taxes will increase? Because you have an opportunity to take action now and prepare for a potential higher tax environment. For every dollar that you save in taxes, you would need to earn $1.50 to net the same $1. That's assuming a 33% effective tax rate. So this is where it matters. Once you reach retirement, you quit earning income. So your savings on taxes during this distribution and income planning phase is critical. It's simple as it sounds. You know, it doesn't seem that complicated. It sounds really simple, but it's much more difficult to actually execute that. And people fail to put together a strategy as they approach retirement. So what does that mean for you? What it means is, as you recap what we're going to talk about, as you look at taxes, helping minimize your taxes can have a dramatic impact on your retirement. So let's just look at the examples we covered today. Look at the Cleavers example. They had a $39,000 loss because they failed to optimize Social Security benefits. Remember, they had to increase the draws on their IRA because they didn't optimize their Social Security, have enough baseline income. They had a $7,500 penalty, and this is just considering one distribution because they failed to take required minimum distributions. Just in this one brief example with a couple of simple illustrations, that's a $47,000 loss because they didn't understand how to minimize their taxes. Are you willing to experience potential losses of over $47,000, either personally for you or think about your loved ones, due to failed opportunities to potentially minimize your taxes at distribution? So what are some things that you can do? I'll say it again. We spend our whole lives saving and accumulating wealth, but very little time determining how to distribute this accumulation, how to keep and hold on to what we've made while receiving that income. So you need to make sure that you have the appropriate diversification, not just of investments or accounts, but of taxable versus non-taxable assets to complement your distribution strategy. So look at the buckets, for example, on our screen. You have taxable buckets. These are things like CDs, non-qualified accounts. You have tax deferred. That might be things like a 401ks, IRAs, annuities. These are taxed upon withdrawal at ordinary income tax rates, kind of like your paycheck. Okay. Then you have your tax-free with qualified withdrawals. So these are things like municipal bonds, Roth IRAs, cash value life insurance. These accounts are taxed before deposit. But what's the benefit? Well, when you make those withdrawals, they're considered tax-free income. So you have the ability now in the low tax environment that we're in to prepare today with tax efficient diversification for potentially minimizing your after-tax dollars during your distribution year. So don't let your opportunity of the environment we're in now, don't miss out on becoming or giving Uncle Sam his retirement, right? If you don't prepare well, then you may be planning more for his retirement than your own. So look at these tax buckets. Do you have these already organized and set up? Not even talking about the vehicle. It's about the tax buckets that you're going to be using in retirement. Now may be the time to do it before potentially tax rates go up. So again, educate yourself. Don't overlook valuable income tax deduction. Do you want professional help to find ways to minimize taxes during the distribution phase of retirement? How confident are you in deciding which accounts to withdraw from first? Are you taking advantage of tax diversification opportunities? So look at your blue sheet. Check that box on helping to minimize your taxes if that's an area that concerns you. But remember, all of these reports will be placed in your generational vault. So check that box off. Now, I got another question for you. What percentage of Americans prepared and e-filed their own tax returns in 2019? What do you think? The answer? It's C. 49% of taxpayers prepared and e-filed their own tax returns in 2019. Do you think they all applied, even just the things we considered here today? So now remember, we talked about the steps that are needed in order to implement a proper strategy. The fourth one here is recommendations and implementations. Making no decision is a decision. To do nothing is a decision, and doing nothing always brings you to nowhere. So you can do all the planning in the world, but if you don't take action, planning does you no good. This is the hardest part of the process. It's the hardest part in many places in life, if you think about it. Knowing what to do and doing it are two totally different things. It's not something that you need to decide on today, but certainly start to consider if you're ready to make changes that might be needed. I kind of think about, going to the gym to get in really good shape, to get, a six pack, to get, in really good shape. I know what I need to do. I know I need to eat right. I know I need to exercise. I need to do all of those things, but actually doing it, that's different, right? That takes a totally different attitude and mentality. So one of the things that we can do is actually help accomplish the implementation of those plans. Although we can't do it for you, we can certainly create the strategy, and if you so choose, we can help you to implement that. And the last thing is that ongoing relationship. How do we do that? Well, helping you navigate the new generation of retirement doesn't end after the initial implementation. I really pride myself on offering the same level of service and support that you really need. And one of the ways that we do that is by using that generational vault. You can start by being able to store all of your financial accounts online with complimentary access to the generational vault. So let's say you take your annuities, your investments, your life insurance, really whatever it is that's important to you, and you store it in the generational vault. I can help you get all your information stored safely and securely online. You'll be able to access everything online 24/7 to see your investments and accounts. Now, what will also be nice about this is because your account values are being synced into generational vault, you'll also have the ability to set up triggers using the technology of Wealth Watch. Now, Wealth Watch can be set to any type of account and will notify you whenever there's a major change in your account, depending on the triggers that you want. So in this example, let's say you want to be notified when your account goes up 10 or below 10. So you see, it doesn't really do anything. There's no actionable point as it goes up and down and moves along in the market. But as soon as it exceeds 10%, there's a trigger, so you'll be notified. The same is true if it were to go down 10%. Now that can be notified to you based on almost any level that you set, which will really help it. So you don't have to constantly watch it. You are able to, you don't have to constantly watch it yourself, logging into your accounts and checking every day. You're notified yourself when something happens. What's also really beneficial about Generational Vault is as long as you have internet access, you can get into your Generational Vault document center. So let's kind of listen to the Cleavers and their story just one last time. Ward and June have retired, and they're crossing destinations off that bucket list that they've had for so long. And they're currently doing a biking tour in California wine country. Nestled in the hills, there's this charming and secluded bed and breakfast that offers this wonderful and beautiful retreat for Ward and June every night. Now on one of the nights, the third night, Ward has a major heart attack and he becomes completely incapacitated. June, remember where they are, she's without her power of attorney. She doesn't have other critical documents that might help her make important decisions for Ward and for their family. Ward and Beaver are thousands of miles away. Just imagine how hard it would be for them to get those important documents. And what's less, they're on their way flying to where they are to try to see them. They may not have access to these sensitive documents that may be needed or collect important information. But if they take advantage of the Generational Vault, they can actually store all these important documents in the document center, so they can have access to those documents no matter where they are around the world. Things like their investment statements, insurance, tax, wills, trusts, medical information, lists of doctors, hospitals, medical directives, powers of attorney, and even a private folder just for you that no one else can see. This is a complimentary service we offer to all of our clients, and we have found they've truly enjoyed it and benefited from it. So, can you currently easily view how your investments are performing in one place? What if you're traveling and something happens? What about all the documents? Do your heirs know where to find everything very easily? Is everything transparent with you, with all the accounts that you use? If you want to look more into leveraging technology for you and using technology in our ongoing relationship, check that box on your blue sheet. If it's something concerns you, we want to address it. So now let's ask this last question. What percentage of baby boomers primarily manage their checking account in digital channels? You might remember this. We talked about that Javelin strategy and research. It was about 2 out of 3 baby boomers. So you as a consumer have come to expect efficiency and rely on its benefit. And your retirement is no different. That's why we offer you tools like the Generational Vault. So now in closing, I want to thank you for your attention and listening to this event. I really hope that you've enjoyed it and benefited from it. I want to offer each of you a complimentary second opinion. Now remember, you can't get a second opinion from the person that gave you the first one. And that's what we would like to offer you free of charge. We're going to offer it to you. This consultation report form, if you're serious about scheduling a strategy session, if you really would like it, we encourage you to pull it out. And on your strategy consultation form on the back, there's 2 places or a schedule. We'd like to encourage you to check 2 times that work best for you. Then we'll verify that with our schedules and get you scheduled. Thank you for attending. We really hope that you've enjoyed this workshop.